So security happens to be the #1 selling point these days, and a lot of people in the GNU/Linux community are suggesting that people move over to free, as in freedom, operating systems. I've used them myself, and GNU/Linux is an increasing force. It's always been good on the server side, but I think it's starting to increase in the general consumers um, um, space. However, I want to express some concerns that I have. The operating system you see in front of you is Trisquel. I've used Trisquel. I've used it on an old Toshiba satellite laptop. And, it was good for what it was, but it didn't get me what I needed. And I'll explain that in just a moment. Certainly it could do all the basics, but there was one extremely critical piece missing. One of the laptops I would certainly like to try is one of these nice big 17-inch Kudu professional types. I went to Think Penguin and they didn't have anything like this. And some people will say, well, why not just buy a 17-incher and install Linux on it? I guess part of me, because the operating system by default would be Windows, and I think this speaks to a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, but the truth is the people in the technology savvy community are a minority compared to everyone else. We may be vocal, but we're still a minority. And the average everyday consumer would prefer just to use Windows because it's already there, because just because it's easier to get up and running. Now, a lot of people these days are, they're aware of the security vulnerabilities, or just plain don't like Windows 8, so a lot of people are going to the Mac. Some people might be discovering System 76. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are as far as that is concerned, but they might be going to something like Ubuntu. But if you've used a mainstream operating system, by that I mean Windows or Macintosh, most of your life, then making the switch to Linux, especially when you're so deeply entrenched in one operating system, is not going to be easy. Okay? Now, if you're switching from Windows to a Macintosh, the Macintosh, they give you free ABC 1, 2, 3, here's how you do it kind of thing. They hold your hand and they walk you through transferring over everything. However, from what I've seen, they don't do that in the GNU+Linux community. You're kind of on your own. And the bulk, and I stress, the bulk of Linux users who work on the server side would perfectly be fine with that. But if you step outside of that and you step into a local Best Buy and you look at the average everyday consumer, chances are they're not going to want to do that. Now, I'm only guessing based on what I've seen in my area, especially. When you go into Best Buy, you see people walking around that that would ask various questions like, will this PC run Office? I remember recently I was talking to a relative of mine who was considering looking for a Chromebook to replace their older Lenovo laptop, primarily for the portability. I didn't suggest to them getting a GNU/Linux system. The Chromebook does run GNU/Linux under the hood, but they asked me, does it run Windows? And that alone tells me that this particular person would be much better off, I think, with a Windows-based cheap PC. And the reason is they've gotten used to using Outlook. They're used to using Microsoft's tools to transfer. And this person's an older person. This particular relative is an older person. And to transfer them from their ThinkPad over to a GNU+Linux operating system, would definitely not be the best choice. I could see myself acting as the acting as that hand holder that I just told you about. Not that I wouldn't mind doing it, but it's just easier to get people who are already familiar with one set of one operating system onto another one, like an updated version of something they're familiar with. That's one of the reasons I think the Chromebook as a Linux GNU/Linux option is taking off, is because it's something people are familiar with. It's a web browser. They don't have to worry about. Take a look here. They don't have to worry about things like. Ooh, I can't even see that. These little icons here. A lot of people won't know what they are. It's just a complete mystery for a lot of people. Now, some people will say that Android is based on GNU/Linux. Again, we go back to the average consumer. The bulk of people don't know that. And unfortunately, Android has been prone to malware. Android has become the Windows of the mobile operating system. Even landscape, even though there is a Windows, Windows is not the Windows of the operating system mobile landscape. Android is. Now, I must stress that if you know what you're doing, and you keep an eye on everything, and you know what to look for, then any operating system is secure, because you yourself made it that way. Unfortunately, we go back to the argument at the beginning that I made about how technology-savvy people are vastly outnumbered by the people who aren't. That also goes for people that the average person using Windows. Now, I've got several friends who are technology-savvy. My BFF is also technology-savvy, and the two of us together, we help each other. We look for stuff. In fact, this particular person was the one that told me that Avast was not necessarily the best choice for Android, and I didn't know that. Okay? And I usually keep an eye out for this thing, but I've had such good luck with Avast on the Windows and the Macintosh platforms that I figured it'd be the same on Android. So even I'm not immune to this sort of mentality that I'm talking about here. And a lot of the average user nowadays, with the publicity of what's really been going on behind closed doors, I think that that's starting to change. But at the same time, you have people wondering, now that I know I'm being spied on, where do I go from here? Because Apple and Android are my only options, and I don't like Apple. And then, of course, you've got Windows Phone. You've got this black phone, which also runs Android, GNU+Linux. But again, to try to communicate all this to the average consumer, there's a pretty good chance that they might be staring at you with glass eyes. Android is also on the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, but has made their way onto laptops. These have not been selling all that well, and the reason is because the first few iterations have been a complete flop. I can't speak for the HP SlateBook 14 because, personally I haven't seen this in stores. And there are still quite a few people who would prefer to walk into a Best Buy as opposed to ordering on Amazon. But in terms of GNU+Linux penetration in the general consumer space, Android's pretty much your only bet. And yet at the same time, a lot of people don't understand that Android runs on top of GNU+Linux. They don't get it. Now, I'm not saying that that's everyone. I'm saying that this is just your everyday person. I stress again that the people that are into the technology, that are passionate about it, if you compare the numbers, yes, we're vocal. Yes, there are a lot of us. But when you compare that to the average consumer, the everyday person who would walk into a Best Buy and wonder, can a Chromebook run my Microsoft Office? That's the kind of person I'm trying to stress here. That's not going to know about needing to get antivirus, like for their phone. Now, a lot of the younger people, my generation and especially beyond, are definitely coming up to speed with that. But even in my age range, I've got quite a few people who don't understand. I've got a very close friend of mine who was wondering about something with their Galaxy phone, and I tried to explain it to them. They said, "I don't know about all that. How about you do it?" So for that person, you have the Google Chromebook, but the Google Chromebook is extremely limited in what it can and cannot do. Now, for everyday computing, for your web stuff, it's fine, but if you need to be on a system all day running spreadsheet applications and whatnot, then that might not be the best. A lot of organizations are opening up and allowing you to use your own hardware, but there are still many who would prefer to utilize Microsoft Windows, and the reason is because these are the organizations that have been around forever. They've got millions upon billions upon trillions upon quadrillions of dollars invested in the Microsoft ecosystem, and going out and buying a new PC or a new Mac for you or me, yes, it's an investment, but compared to a business having to make this change to thousands of systems, $1,100 or $1,200 is just a drop in the bucket compared to, what I was just telling you about. And as a result, Google's Android has made inroads into the general consumer space, but, and again, I stress, the non-technology savvy, the non-server person, the non-IT person would most likely end up running Windows because that's what they're used to, that's what they're accustomed to, and they may have heard about these Chromebooks, they might want to try them, and some people may like them because they know how to use the Chrome browser. Others may think, where's my Office, and return it. Do you see where I'm going? It is for these reasons that I just think that GNU+Linux, while certainly a lot of people want to say GNU+Linux is more secure. Perhaps fundamentally that's true, but again, if you know what you're doing and you're willing to put in the time to learn and the effort to configure, then any operating system can be safe. But again, we return to the general consumer who would probably just want something to work, and just installing GNU+Linux for a lot of them might be out of their purview. And even like I mentioned earlier, the System 76 computers. I remember on YouTube there was literally a news media story about somebody who purchased an Ubuntu computer and thought that everything was going to run like Microsoft Windows. That's the problem that I think is keeping GNU+Linux from the desktop. It's the fact that the average consumer turns on a system and expects it to work with what they already know. They don't have the time or are not willing to put in the effort, but many of them don't have the time. You're looking at people that get a computer but are going to be using their work software on it, need to get work done, people that need to get their reports in. I'll tell you a story. One semester during my master's work, I had to turn in a piece of writing that I'd had to redo 6 times, and I was using OpenOffice.org, the OpenOffice free software. Now, I'd been using it for years, so I was comfortable with it. I was using it, everything was fine. Out of nowhere, the thing became corrupted. I had to act fast, and I do mean fast because that paper had to be in within the next couple of hours, and I was practically done. I was saving it, everything was good. Then I came back and it was gone. And it's this kind of scenario that a lot of people are not willing to put up with when it comes to using software that they're not used to. Like I said, GNU+Linux is making inroads with the general consumer space because it's on Android, but because many people are unaware of this, I doubt if you use the name GNU+Linux, they're going to stare at you and they're going to be like, huh? And I know this from experience. Several years ago, I remember somebody got one of the early T-Mobile phones that ran Android, and I said, did you know that runs GNU+Linux? And they're like, what's that? That is the general consumer attitude, the everyday person who would walk into a store just to buy something and get out, not necessarily to, They may look around to make a decision if they're going to make a big investment, but a lot of people don't come in to spend like I do. I go into Best Buy or another local electronics store, say a Staples, walk around for a couple hours taking all the sights in because I enjoy it. It's my passion. The vast majority of people aren't like that. They want to get in, get what you need, and get out. And it is that market that GNU+Linux, I think, needs to penetrate. And until it does, until we have a turnkey solution, and System 76 is a turnkey solution, I think, for most people. But when I say everybody, I'm talking about also people with vision problems, people who I'm familiar with, people with blindness. And for them, I have not seen a piece of software as robust as ZoomText or ZoomText Mac or Magic available on the GNU+Linux operating system. There's a basic screen magnifier, but every time I've tried it in the more recent desktop environments, the graphics card just doesn't want to work. Like, it'll say your software is up and running, but it's not. There's nothing enlarged. There's nothing highlighted. There's nothing. And there are also certain distributions that can utilize screen reading software, but I have the same problem. I've had issues of the hardware and the software not playing nice together. That is another problem to GNU+Linux adoption. People don't want to tinker. They just want to get stuff done. And I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking for the vast majority of your everyday Joe and Jane. And when it comes to getting stuff done, for somebody that needs screen reading software, perhaps they're a little bit easier to accommodate because if you can get Orca up and running, you're fine. But for people that have some usable vision like myself, my acuity is diminished, but I've still got some. My peripheral vision is diminished, but I've still got some. My glare sensitivity is severe, and sometimes my colors blend in, but with software like ZoomText, I can magnify what I need, I can enhance what I need, and
Window.
I can even have stuff read back to me on command. And it is this kind of robust enhancement that makes the software such a wonderful asset to my productivity workflow, whether that be on the Windows side or the Macintosh side. And unfortunately, I just haven't seen that in the GNU+Linux. I'm not saying that it's not there, but I'm talking about a system where you can literally turn it on, hit a button, and it goes. There is a free operating system alternative in the GNU+Linux community for the blind. There is one called Linux, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's something else completely different, and I can't remember offhand what it's called. And that's the other problem. Awareness. Most people aren't even aware that the options exist out there. They're probably aware of Ubuntu because Ubuntu's been spending millions of dollars on commercial advertising, but that's not completely free as in Libre software. The operating systems that are completely free as in Libre software, the last time I looked, the GNU+Linux operating system as a whole had just 2% market share. And the way I see it is, if you want to get it into the laps of the average consumer, the person who would walk into a Best Buy, get what they need, and walk out without asking a lot of questions, or maybe ask a lot of very beginner-specific questions. For instance, I've had people, I remember somebody my age several years ago who had asked me, because we've been friends for a long time, a friend of mine my age from the South who had asked me about computer help, and I would ask him, what version of Windows do you run? Because that would help me analyze the problem. Tell them what to do. They said, I don't know. I said, what does your start button look like? They said, what's my start button? That is the general consumer market that I'm talking about. That is the kind of consumer marketplace that GNU+Linux really needs to help penetrate in order to gain wider adoption. But a lot of people are thinking, well, GNU+Linux is more secure. Again, you have the problem of people that don't know what they're doing. I made a mention that GNU+Linux runs Android, and Android's everywhere. Most people don't realize GNU+Linux is under the hood of Android. And Android, if you're not careful, if you're the click 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 type, you can find out very quickly that there's malware on Android. Heck, I'm a tech savvy person, and I didn't even know that Avast, something that I trusted for a long time on the Windows and the Macintosh, was a problem on Android. I never knew this until my best friend told me about it. So you see what I'm talking about. Until we get a turnkey solution that bakes in security that you literally don't have to think about, until that happens, I think that we're always going to see minuscule adoption in the GNU+Linux operating system, the entirely Libre software community, compared to everywhere else. And in my case, until I see software where I can switch on and off my magnification and enhancements and speech enhancements at the turn of a switch, because you saw that I was able to thumb through those enhancements super quick, and I can even get more enhancements again with another keystroke no matter where I am. Until I see that kind of turnkey functionality in the free operating system community, I don't see myself switching. I'm not saying that I don't like it. I love to tinker with it. But in terms of using it on a day-to-day basis, I would say that it has a long way to go until everybody can adopt it. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. The average consumer versus the tech-savvy person. Until the average consumer can see it, I think that we're going to remain the GNU+Linux operating system is going to remain in a niche. I just wanted to get that off my chest. Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.